us humans are just like vegetation out in the world, right? Studies have found that monocultural farming is actually harmful to society, and not just society, but like the environment. And why? Because it depletes the resources from the soil. It dries it out. It makes it to where it's harder to retain water. It's salt up. And then it's harder to get anything to grow in there. It becomes very arid. You see what I'm saying? But when you implement diversification, right? Because we see it in these monoculture. I mean, you just got to go into rural America, right? You see a whole farm or a whole field full of corn, just corn, or a whole field full of apple trees, just apple trees, Honeycrisp apples. And yeah, they may do well for the most part because they have to add all these additives to the soil. But there's several trees, there's several vegetation that dies, that dwindles by the wayside because it is not receiving what is needed. And it's not getting what is needed because everybody are the same. And so because everybody are corn, and since they're all the same type of corn, they all depend on the same nutrients, the same amount of water intake, the same access to light versus shade coverage. You see what I'm saying? Everybody is affected by the same diseases. So if some type of blight was to come through, it'll probably kill everything in there because why? They are all the same. And there's no one out there, there's no corn out there that's dealing with the structure of the soil trying to help save everyone. Why? Because they all the same. They do the same jobs. They perform the same jobs. They require the same resources. You see what I'm saying? And they're incapable of providing in such a large quantity when they all depend on the same. So if white people was to get what they want, or black people, or whomever out here who wants this homogeneously, I don't know why this word is butchering me, but if you want a homogeneously look to your environment, then go for it. But watch how you die out. We see it in these all white communities. There's usually about 10,000 people living there. They don't have the means to keep their infrastructure going. Their economy is almost non-existent. And that is why they depend on these areas that are like the metropolitan areas that are more diverse for employment, for education, etc., etc. Right? How many people live in places where you got to drive 30 plus minutes to get to a hospital? That ain't the case when you live in the mother freaking city. You within like not even a 10-minute drive from the hospital. And then there's usually like a hospital on every side of town. You see what I'm saying? There's parts of America, rural America, all they got is a True Value in the Dollar General. If you really ride out there, you'll see the dilapidation in their housing. Mother freaking roofing, non-existent. It's so torn down. They got vegetation growing in their drains. You see what I'm saying? It's a hot mess out here. And it's because they have tricked themselves into thinking that we can survive with just us. But that's not the case. We are, like I said, we are like the vegetation out here. We depend on diversification. We need one another because with diversification, there are things that you do that I do not do, yet those actions can benefit me. Here in America, you got a lot of people talking about services that, the people are using. Let me tell you one thing that most people don't understand, don't know. But immigrants contribute to a lot of the services that only citizens are allowed to gain access to. Unemployment, Social Security. You see what I'm saying? Other welfare services out here, their hard labor contributes to it, yet they are exempt from utilizing the services. Yet you got people out here who think that immigrants are disproportionately using and exhausting these services. How? They can't even get access due to lack of citizenship. And then when you take aside lack of citizenship, then you see that there's people being left out based solely on other factors that we aren't privy to. You got people who wrongfully think that there's more black people on welfare than there are white people. There's a literal term, welfare queen, that is associated with black women, despite white women being predominantly those that are taking or receiving welfare. You have to take into consideration that society, when you disregard the disparities, society reflects population. There's about 330 million people that live in the United States. Of 330 million people, 60% of them are labeled as white. So since 60% of the United States population is labeled as white, that means more of them are going to be inside of jails and prisons. More of them are going to be utilizing welfare. More of them are going to have more access to jobs, especially when you look into when you take into consideration the fact that people are talking about people not being hired. You got jobs that hires more white men than anybody else. You got jobs that hire more white women than anybody else. Yes, they may have some blacks and some black folks, excuse me, because I don't like that blacks thing. Yes, they may have some black folks. Yes, they may have some white folks. Yeah, they may got some Latinos and some Asian folks, some Native American folks. But the numbers compared to the white people is drastically different. Yes, there are some nuances. But for the most part, this is how society reflects in the United States as it pertains to race. So yes, black people are disproportionately incarcerated because when you look at the way that policing is carried out, biases are involved. The police disproportionately stop, arrest, and charge more black people than they do white people. The same with the courts. The courts convict and sentence disproportionately more black people. But that doesn't change the fact that there are still a lot of white people. This is why I think the way that some people basically talks about data points is skewed, because people sit here and they push these fallacies and they don't really know how to interpret data. But the truth of the matter is that if there's 60% of white people that reside in the United States, then that 60% is going to reflect in every aspect, good and bad, social and criminal. It does not matter. So yes, there are more white people on welfare, even though a lot of black people, a lot of Latino people, a lot of Asian people are denied welfare, even if they attempted to apply. But most of them don't apply because of the stigma that's attached in being colored. Being white and on welfare is like, yeah, you might get labeled as trailer trash or white trash, but it's kind of like this expected thing. It's just like, you white trash, and we keep it pushing. But when black people get put on there, it's the end of the world. Now you welfare queens. Now you contributing to the bulk of crime out here because poverty is associated with crime. And since black women are disproportionately raising their children in single parent households with little to no money, it's most of y'all children out here wreaking havoc. And this is how society thinks. Even though we see in the world, and we ain't even got to focus on the world, we can just focus on the United States. Here in the United States, majority of the population here is poor. So if majority of the population here, over 90% of the U.S. population is poor, over 60% of the U.S. population are white, what does that tell you? Come on. Piece everything together. What can you infer from that? I infer from that white people make up the majority in all these spaces. If white people are 60% of the U.S. population and 90% of the U.S. population are poor, that means At least 90% of that 60% of them white people are poor. So they resort to the same systems and services and gripes and moans and complaints as the rest of us. Even though they try to make it seem like they don't, they do. Okay, let's continue. Because I'm trying to educate, but at the same time, I want to get through this book.
If you want people to think otherwise of you more positively, then give them more positive experiences.